Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this cute little thing is the Kia Stonic crossover. Now, because of the massive sales success of SUVs, a recent trend we've seen manufacturers do is take their small popular family hatchbacks and give them a bit of a lift and turning them into crossovers. Famously, Ford created the Puma out of the Fiesta, and as a result, the Puma has outsold the Fiesta and the Fiesta has ceased production in 2023. But anyway, with Kia, what they've done is they've taken the Rio family hatchback, given it a bit of a lift, and created the Stonic. Now, unlike the Stonic's big brothers in its SUV lineup, the Nero, Sportage and Sorento, their focus is to be big, practical, comfortable family SUVs. But with the Stonic, Kia have gone a little bit in a different direction. They've created a little crossover which is frugal but also fun to drive, with a bit of a sacrifice to practicality, which we'll get onto in a little bit. So as a result, they've created the Stonic, which comes as a mild hybrid. So I've had this little Stonic for a week and I'm going to answer a couple of questions. Number one, is it any good? And number two, in a segment which is actually filled with practical, comfortable little crossovers, how does the Stonic fare up against them? Stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the B SUV segment, if you want your car to do well in the sales, it's got to stand out from the crowd, and I think Kia have done a pretty good job with the Stonic. Now, I can see a combination of cars when I look at the car. Definitely at the front I can see hints of the Rio. Of course it has been altered to give it that crossover look, but with the taillights and at the rear I do get hints of the previous generation Sportage, and I did like the taillight cluster there, so it's really nice to kind of see it here on the Stonic. Now yes, as you can see, the car is not clean, but the weather conditions have actually made it difficult to keep it clean. But with this honeybee yellow, it definitely stands out, and on a misty day like today, that's not a bad thing. And actually, this is the standard color you can get with the Stonic. Every other color is an optional extra and does cost. So it's actually really cool to find yellow as your standard color on a car. Now, with this being the GT Line S, we do get the two-tone paint job with the body and the roof. So again, it gives it a very distinctive look. But also at the front, as I mentioned about that fun to drive element, well, we've got a load of vents here and they are real. We've got the Tiger grille where there are some vents here on the side. We've got these three little slots here which do allow air in at the bottom of the bumper as well, and also just on the side here to allow air to go across the wheels. But yeah, I do think Kia have done a really good job with the Stonic's design, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. And also I will mention with this GT Line S, we do get 17-inch alloy wheels, and they do look very attractive as well. But yeah, I am impressed with what Kia have done with the styling of the Stonic, but I think on that note, it's time we have a little sit on the inside and see what it's like there. Sat in the front of the Stonic, you are greeted by a very comfortable interior that's really nicely laid out. Now, when it comes to interior design, when compared to its bigger brothers, the Nero and Sportage, the design in here is starting to look a little bit dated, but it has got a nice conventional look to it with the high-up infotainment screen and basically all the controls lower down. So ergonomically, I am very happy with that. But yes, it is a little bit dated compared to its bigger brothers. Now, because this is a small crossover, getting in and out of the Stonic is really easy thanks to that raised seating position and ride height. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that the seats themselves are very comfortable. On this GT Line S, we have got faux leather and fabric inserts on them, and they are very comfortable and they do hold a big bear like me in place. Now, I will mention they have only got manual adjustment and there's no lumbar adjustment with them, but I've actually been very comfortable in them. Now, also with the steering, we have got both rake and reach adjustment, so getting the perfect driving position is easy. Now, when it comes to interior quality, like a lot of cars in this segment, there's a lot of hard scratchy plastics in here, especially on top of the dash, on top of the doors as well, and on the center console. Now Kia have tried to liven it up. We have got some metal effect trim here on the dash and on the center console as well, and we have got this kind of faux carbon fiber-esque trim on the dash as well to liven it up. And yeah, for the most part, it's a really nice in terms of its design, but there are a lot of hard scratchy plastics in here. But we have got a bit of faux leather on the armrest and also here on the side of the door panel, which is really nice to rest your knee against when you're driving along on the motorway, resting your foot. So I do like that. I also like the steering wheel, which is leather covered, and it has got the flat bottom to it to give it a bit of a sporty feel. And we've got the perforated leather on the sides as well. So it is really nice to hold on to whilst you're driving. But yeah, like a lot of cars in this segment, there is a lot of hard scratchy plastics, but they do feel of a good quality. And whilst I've been driving the Stonic this week, I've had no creaks or rattles at all. So yeah, I'm happy with the build quality in the Stonic. Cubby spaces up front are actually pretty good. Now the door bins are surprisingly large and you can get a large bottle of drink in there. Now they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit, but that was a genuine surprise to find in the Stonic. That is impressive. Now on the center console ahead of the gear lever, we have got a little tray area which is rubber lined, which is perfect to lay your phone on when you've got it connected to the USB-A charging socket. We've also got a 12-volt socket as well, and you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. It is wired only. Then just below there, we got another tray area, but this isn't rubber lined, it is hard scratchy plastic, but that's perfect for putting your wallet in there or a few little loose items, but don't put loose change or keys or anything in there because they will make some noise. And then behind the gear lever, we have got a couple of cup holders. They are in two different sizes as well, but I will find that if you put a bottle in there loose, you might find it rocking around a bit because there are no plastic grippers, and also that's not rubber lined either. Then we have got the armrest, which if I lift up, does unveil a bit of extra space. There is a cloth lining to it, so I do appreciate that. But other rivals out there have got more space under the center armrest. And also, disappointingly, yeah, the armrest doesn't slide forward. So it means I have to kind of rest my arm back a bit whilst I'm on a long drive. And then finally, we have got the glove box, which is of a decent size and shape. Surprisingly, I don't have a book pack in there, which takes up about 90% of it, so I can use all of the glove box space. But again, not lined with any fabric, so loose items, they will rattle around in there. And then also, we've got a little spot there for your sunglasses. So yeah, when it comes to the cubby spaces here in the Stonic, I am genuinely surprised by the amount of space in here. Granted, underarm storage isn't the best, but I do love this little tray area, and the door pockets are very impressive. Now I do want to very quickly talk about the button layout here in the Stonic's cabin, because it is very ergonomically sound, and if you have owned a Kia over the last 10 years or so, you are going to feel right at home in here. So on the infotainment screen, we've got an 8-inch touchscreen display with a number of physical shortcut buttons underneath. Just below there, we have got our single zone climate control, which is really easy to use when on the move. And I have noticed a couple of things actually with the design. So firstly, we've got these little buttons that come down for the front and rear demisting. And I remember seeing those on a Genesis G70 shooting brake, because it's a really quite quirky feature, and ergonomically I love where they're positioned. So I really do love that. Then just below there, as I mentioned, we've got our USB-A charging input and 12-volt socket. Then we've got our lineup of comfort buttons. So they operate things like the parking sensors, drive modes, also your heated seats and steering wheel. Now, speaking of the steering wheel, on the left-hand side, we have got your media and communication controls. And on the right-hand side, we've got our driver data display controls, as well as our cruise control controls. Now, if you go for the automatic version of the GT Line S, you do get radar guided cruise control. But as I have a old school manual, you don't get that feature, which is a little bit disappointing. But you know what? The cruise control is still very helpful. And then we've got a couple of buttons just underneath the right-hand air vent. Now they do things like your traction control, your start-stop, and your tyre pressure reset. So yeah, ergonomically here in the Stonic, it is a really nicely laid out, albeit, as I have said, a little bit old-fashioned in its design, but it's just really nice and easy to get used to. And then finally, we've got the infotainment system. So it is an 8-inch touchscreen display set high up on the dash. You've got your shortcut buttons just underneath, and the menu icons are nice and big. And it is genuinely a decent system. It is starting to show its age because it's not the quickest system out there, but do you know what? It just works. It does everything that you want it to do. Now, when it comes to the dials in front of the steering wheel, we've got traditional analog dials. It has been a while since I've used and seen them, but we've got a little 4-inch display in the center, which gives you all your readouts and information, and it is colored, which I do like. So yeah, when it comes to the Stonic's interior, it is a nice, comfortable, ergonomically sound place to be. It just happens to be showing its age. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there were a couple of design things which I've come across. Number one, these little buttons that protrude down, which I've seen in a Genesis. But secondly, for a Kia, the lack of piano plastic in here, and that is a big surprise. There's a little bit up here and on this fence, but that's about it. Everything else is matte plastic, and that is actually a welcome thing to see in a Kia. And on that note, I think it's time we stop looking at the front of the Stonic and we see what it's like in the back. Sat in the back of the Stonic, it's a surprisingly spacious back here, but not as spacious as most of its rivals. However, it is comfortable back here, and I could easily see myself doing perhaps a medium length journey. Now, that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got an okay amount of knee room, and I can just about squeeze my feet underneath the driver's seat, so I could stretch out a little bit. Headroom is not too bad either, but if you are 6 foot tall, you might find yourselves feeling a bit cramped back here. And it's definitely suitable for 2 adults in the back of the Stonic. I definitely do not recommend trying to get 3 adults back here. However, it should be fine for kids. Now, speaking of kids, we have got Isofix supports on the outer seats. There are no plastic covers or anything to navigate through, but we just got to get through the little gap in the leatherette to affix a child seat, which might be a little bit tough and stiff to begin with, so that's just something to be aware of. Now, cubby spaces, I'm going to say, are okay. Now, the door pockets, just like the front, are pretty generous. You can get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there, but again, they're not lined with any fabric. Now, when it comes to the aeroplane style pockets, I haven't got one behind the driver's seat, but I have behind the passenger seat, which is okay, but I would, like to have one here myself. But I've got no armrest with no additional cup holders, which is a little bit disappointing. Now, when it comes to features, I've basically got one USB-A charging input, so at least one child or occupant back here will be happy being able to charge their mobile device. And then we've got the windows, which are nice and square. They do allow a lot of light in, and they are a really good size, and they do open all the way down, so that is another handy benefit. So yeah, being sat back here in the Stonic, it is surprisingly spacious, but like I said, there are rivals out there with a bit more space for rear occupants, particularly adults, with a few more additional features as well. But on that note, I think it's time to leave the rear seats and see what the boot is like. Opening the boot of the Stonic presents you with 352 litres of space, which is the Stonic's Achilles heel because it does fall behind a lot of its rivals. Even the Hyundai Bayon has a larger boot capacity than the Stonic. But when you got the boot open, you are greeted with a nice wide square load area. There is a bit of a boot lip to navigate over of about 5-6 inches. So if you are loading any large bulky items into the back of the Stonic, that's just something to be aware of and careful of. Now, when it comes to features, we have a couple of them. We have got some not proper tethering hooks. We've got a couple of little metal bars which you can affix a netting to. We've got a couple of shopping hooks as well. And there is a little bit of underfloor storage. Now, you can't have a space saver spare wheel on this GT Line S because we have got that 48 volt mild hybrid system underneath the boot floor. Now, there is a little hook underneath the parcel shelf, so you can actually put the boot floor and hook it up to it. Oh, I'll just try and do that now. There you go, so you can kind of get to any items underneath, but there is a tiny bit of space there that could be useful, especially if you want to hide some items away that you don't want readily available. And as I mentioned about the netting, we have got a little pouch here on the left hand side to store the netting out of the way. Now, what's disappointing is that you can't put the parcel shelf underneath the boot floor, and there is a little bit of a ledge or a lift at the back of the boot area. So if you are going to put any large bulky items into the back of the Stonic, you've got to navigate that little lift there. And then finally, if I do want to put the seats down at the back, one of the bonuses is actually an almost completely flat load area, which is a bonus. But like I said, you just got to navigate that ridge. So yeah, the boot capacity of the Stonic is not the best when compared to its rivals. You can get perhaps a medium case and a couple of weekend bags in the back of the Stonic. But yeah, it's fine for your family, your weekly shop, things like that. It is just disappointing that when compared to its rivals, yeah, it does fall quite a bit far behind. But as I mentioned earlier, Kia are looking to have the Stonic as a fun little crossover, not the most practical. So really, I should say then, on that note, let's close the boot, take the Stonic for a drive and see how fun it is. Now, before we get on with the driving part of the review, I just want to address the elephant in the room. So if you can't see out of the window, basically that is what I've got to deal with today. Yes, it is incredibly miserable out, it's raining, and also we had about 4 inches of snow last night. So not ideal conditions for doing a car review, but of course I will persevere for you. But yes, it is very horrible and miserable, but you know what? It's typical British weather. So we're going to persevere and crack on. So once you start driving the Stonic, you do find that it is a very comfortable little car, but also very easy to drive, and it's very eager as well. It feels like there's a little Jack Russell puppy under the bonnet that's just poised and ready to do a zoomie, but I will get onto that in a little bit when we talk about the engine. Now, because you sit a little bit higher up than you do in the Rio hatchback, when it comes to visibility, it is actually really good. Saying that, you can sit yourself nice and low in the Stonic, so it does give you a bit of a sporty feel. But I got a brilliant view of the road ahead. I've also got some reasonably thick A-pillars, but because of the way that they're raked, I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a decent size and shape, and I have got blind spot monitoring on this particular car. And if I look over my shoulder, there's a little bit of a thick C-pillar there, but I have got that blind spot monitoring, so I'm not too concerned. And then rear visibility is not too bad. I've got a decent sized rear screen, but when it comes to parking on this particular car, I have got a reversing camera, but there are also things like parking sensors you get as standard, and I'll go on to that when we discuss the trim levels. So yeah, once you start driving in the Stonic, first impressions are very positive, but not only that, it actually deals with this horrible wet weather and snowy weather really well. I've been genuinely impressed with how the Stonic has driven when the roads were actually much worse earlier today. So yeah, first impressions, really good. Now, when it comes to trim levels in the Stonic range, at present there are 4 to choose from. Now, it starts off with the 2, you then move up to the GT line, then oddly you go to the 3, and then the top of the range GT line S, which is what I've got here. Now, one of the great things about the Stonic is that really you can go for any of them and you'll get a decent amount of kit as standard. Now, if you go for the entry level 2, you do get things like rear parking sensors, cruise control, air conditioning, and that 8-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. So in terms of certain things that you would want in your car to begin with, you can't go wrong with the 2 spec. But I would recommend looking at the GT line and the 3 just to get a few extra luxuries on your Stonic. Now, one thing I'll mention as well, if you go for the 2 and the GT line, you get 16-inch alloy wheels, and if you go for the 3 or the GT line S, which is what I've got here, they get bumped up to 17s, and they do look very attractive. But like I said, you can't really go wrong with any spec in the Stonic range. You just get a very decent amount of standard kit. Of course, if you want all the bells and whistles, heated seats, heated steering wheel, things like that, then of course go for the GT Line S. But the one thing I will mention is that if you want radar guided cruise control, or smart cruise control as Kia call it, yes, you get it on the GT Line S, but you only get it on the automatic version, not the manual, which is what I've got here, and that's a little bit disappointing. But yeah, pick any spec in the Stonic range, because really you can't go wrong. And also, it's a lot of car for your money. It's very, very reasonably priced. So when it comes to powering the Stonic, it is really nice and easy to remember. There's one engine available with 2 power outputs, depending on which trim level you go for. So at the heart of the Stonic is a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, and if you go for the entry level 2 and GT line, it gives you 99 brake horsepower and 172 newton meters of torque, and that's without hybridization, or the mild hybrid system. And you can have that with either a 6-speed manual gearbox or a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and that all goes to the front wheels. Now if you go for the 3-spec or the GT Line S, which is what I've got here, you get the upgraded 48 volt mild hybrid system, which you can find under the boot floor. Now that gives you a little extra boost in power, 20 brake horsepower, so you've got 119 to play with. Now the torque figure remains the same at 172 newton meters. Now it's actually a really nice responsive system with the mild hybrid. Like I said, it feels like there's a little Jack Russell under the bonnet that wants to do a zoomy. So what you find is that the engine is very keen and eager to get going, very responsive under your right foot, and around town and in residential and urban areas, it's very nippy. It's a perfect town car. Now when it comes to performance, okay, yes, even though it's a nippy car, it's not the quickest. 0 to 60 time with the mild hybrid setup and the manual gearbox, you're looking at just a smidge over 10 seconds. For the lower powered versions, you're looking just under 12 seconds, which isn't the quickest in class, but again, because of that urgency, it feels quicker than what it actually is, and I do like that. It does have this nice playfulness and responsiveness about it. Now when it comes to economy on this mild hybrid version, Kia say on a WLTP combined cycle I should get a smidge over 50 miles per gallon, and I do believe them. Now when I'm doing my drive to work on a daily basis, I am getting in the high 40s to low 50s, and that's a combination of A roads, B roads, and driving in town. So I am quite impressed with that. Now on the motorway, I have found I've kind of got an average of around 49 mpg. Again, I'm actually very impressed with that because it is very close to what Kia state. So yeah, I do think that this is a nice little frugal mild hybrid crossover, but I will state that there are cars out there that can do better in terms of economy, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive than the Stonic. And then we move on to the 6-speed manual gearbox, which actually is a joy to use. The clutch pedal is nice and light, and there's a real nice easy bite to feel as you put it in gear. And then when you do change gear, you find there's a little bit of notchiness there, but it's what I call a positive notch. And by that I mean, you know, you've got it in gear. And that's one of those things that you do want in this kind of car. I remember the days of, well, before they were Stellantis and it was PSA, when you could get a Peugeot or a Citroen and all you had to do was sneeze and all of a sudden the car's gone into reverse. That's how light the gear shift is. But no, it's got a nice feel to it. And as I go through the gears, yeah, I just know I've got it in gear. So that's one nice positive with, positive notch even, with the 6-speed manual. Now the other option is a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Now I've not driven that transmission with the Stonic, but I have driven the 7-speed dual clutch on other Kias, and for day-to-day driving you'll have no issues with it whatsoever. It's nice and responsive, it changes gears seamlessly, and it is just a real lovely joy to use. The only thing with it, and I've experienced this with other dual clutch systems, is that at a low speed, if you just suddenly put your foot down, you can get it to hesitate and catch it off guard. So that's just something to be aware of. But if you have got it in, say, sport mode, you will find it is actually a bit more responsive and will quickly get into gear. But for day-to-day driving, if you've got it in, say, comfort or normal and eco, it will just, have that slight hesitation there for you. But this 6-speed manual has been a joy, and when combined with the engine, it really is a lovely setup. These two work very well together. Now, what about the Stonic's ride and refinement? Well, for day-to-day driving, I think it's absolutely fine. It is a very comfortable car to be in, but there is a little but to let you know about. And that is because of the fact that this has got a very fun, sporty nature about it, you find that the ride is a little bit firmer than some of its rivals. Now, that's not to say it's uncomfortable and it's, going to give you a broken back. Far from it. But it is just a little bit firmer than its rivals, and as a result, when you do things like cornering, you find it does remain quite flat and planted, something I do like about the Stonic. And the other thing as well is I got the 17-inch alloy wheels, which are the largest you can get on the Stonic, and as a result, as you can see at low speed, it is a little bit fidgety and a little bit unsettled, but I wouldn't call it uncomfortable. It is still a very comfortable place to be, but I would just have to note the fact that there are more comfortable cars in this segment, but that's just the way the Stonic has been set up. And then we come to refinement, which for the most part for day-to-day driving you'll have no issues with, but the biggest intrusion into the car is tyre roar. That's pretty much it. Now, when you're driving on a motorway, you do get a bit of tyre roar coming into the cabin, but it's not as bad as perhaps what you were originally thinking. Now, there is a bit of wind noise that comes off the wing mirror and the A-pillars, but again, it's not too intrusive. But the big surprise is actually engine noise. There's none coming into the cabin. I'm doing about 2,000 RPM, so, I was expecting to hear a bit of a rumble coming into the cabin, but I haven't. It's actually a surprisingly refined car to be in, apart from that tyre roar. But the stereo system in the Stonic is pretty decent. It's not a named system, but as a standard system in the car, it happily gets rid of any of those noise intrusions from the outside. I've been happily listening to my tunes or chatting with a passenger next to me, and I've not cared really, or have not felt like the outside noise was ruining the conversation. So that is a big bonus. So what about the Stonic's handling? Well, as I mentioned with the suspension, it is a little bit firmer than other cars in its segment, and there's very little roll or lean in the corners. And then when you couple that with the actual handling side of the Stonic, you have a genuinely fun little crossover to drive. It really is a joy. Now, it starts with the steering wheel, which I said earlier, I do love the fact that it is leather wrapped. We've got the flat bottom at the bottom of it, so it does feel nice and sporty, and then we have got perforated leather on the outer edges, and it is a really nice shape and size as well. It just feels really nice in my hands. And then as I kind of start going around these corners a little bit gingerly than usual because of the black ice and snow still on the ground, but you find it is very responsive. As soon as you start turning, the car turns with you, and you do feel connected to those front wheels. Now, I will be honest, I have got it in sport mode, so it feels like there's a little extra weight in the steering. There's more responsiveness in the accelerator pedal, and there is just that urgency that I've mentioned from under the bonnet. It really is a fun car to drive, and it wants to get going. I've only got 120 brake horsepower, but in this type of car, it's enough. I mean, yes, I think maybe 150 would probably be the maximum I'd ask for, but do you know what? I'm having a hoot and a half driving this car with the power and everything it's got. And again, having a manual gearbox, so I'm in control of the gears, and you got that nice old school feel. It's just a delight. And the other thing as well is when you got it in normal or eco, yes, the steering does lighten off a little bit, and it makes it an absolute doddle to park. It really is nice and light, but it doesn't feel, again, like it's over assisted. It feels like you are connected to the front tyres. You know what the car is doing. Yeah, this is a genuinely nice, fun little crossover. I really am impressed by it. So with my time in the Stonic, what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles that I've come across that I need to let you know about? I'm going to be honest, they are very, very few and far between. One niggle that I have come across, and what it is, especially if you use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto and you have got one of the trim levels that comes with SatNav, is that you will find that if you are approaching a speed camera, you'll get a little audio bong come into the cabin. And if you're not quite sure what that bong is because you haven't got that system on, you might find it a little bit annoying, but it is just giving you a little bit of a warning that a speed camera is up ahead. And then in terms of niggles, I think that's it. I've not really come across any more. Even the safety systems with the lane keep assist and the lane departure warning, they've been absolutely fine. I've not found them to be too strong or too intrusive if holding me in lane. No, I've been really quite pleased with it. Something I will say, which is a compliment, but it might come off as a niggle, is that these are the best heated seats I've ever come across. In fact, I'm actually going to go as far as to say they're too good. I've gotten into the car on a couple of very frosty mornings, including this morning when the car had snow on it, and I hit the engine on and I hit the heated seats and the steering wheel. Now, you've got 3 stages to the heated seats, so as always it goes to the hottest setting first. But I kid you not, after 30 seconds, I had to turn it down. It was really that warm. I mean, if I had kept it on the strongest setting, I'm pretty sure, like a turkey being pulled out of the oven, my arse would have needed to have been basted before being put back in to finish cooking. It was really that hot. And I do apologise for putting that vision into your minds. But yeah, that's, you know, it's a compliment because it's a great heated seat system. The heated steering wheel is also really good as well. Yeah, this has just been a really nice, cute, fun crossover to drive for the week, and I think it's time we go straight to the conclusion. So what are my thoughts on the Kia Stonic mild hybrid crossover? Well, I'm gonna be honest, I've been pleasantly surprised. I was not expecting the Stonic to be this good. I was expecting it to just be like every other crossover out there, but I've been pleasantly surprised. It is a genuine, fun little crossover that has a really lovely, peppy little engine that's very keen and eager, and it looks good as well. Now, yes, I am singing its praises, but it's not perfect. It is flawed. The practicality side of the Stonic needs to be improved to compete with rivals. That is its biggest Achilles heel. But when it comes to things like technology and standard equipment, you get an awful lot for your money. Now, yes, in some regards it is starting to feel a little bit dated, especially when you compare it to the rest of the Kia range. But I know that there are some people out there that just simply don't care about that. And also, if you don't really care about the practicality and you're after a fun little crossover that looks good, especially in yellow, has got decent rear passenger space, but again, you're not too concerned about boot space, and you want a 7-year warranty, this could very well be the car for you. I would take the Stonic over the likes of an MG ZS with its petrol engine. This just feels much more fun to drive and much more engaging. So yeah, the Kia Stonic mild hybrid is a really good, fun little crossover, but don't expect it to be the most advanced car out there. It is starting to show its age, but I would say get one whilst you still can. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Kia Stonic mild hybrid crossover, because I have actually really enjoyed this review. No, it's again. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Kia Stonic crossover. As always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions or comments about the Stonic and my time with it, please put them down in the comment section below and I will do my utmost to answer them. Of course, I'm on social media. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, so don't forget to follow on there as well. But everyone, I've been, hugely impressed with the Kia Stonic. It's a genuinely fun little car to drive and be in, and it just shows again that the Koreans, you can't underestimate them. So everyone, I hope you have a great day. Keep yourselves safe, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care everybody, and bye-bye.